There was once in the country of Alifbai a sad city, the saddest of cities, a city so ruinously sad that it had forgotten its name. It stood by a mournful sea full of glumfish, which were so miserable to eat that they made people belch with melancholy even though the skies were blue. In the north of the sad city stood mighty factories in which, so I'm told, sadness was actually manufactured, packaged and sent all over the world, which never seemed to get enough of it. Black smoke poured out of the chimneys of the sadness factories and hung over the city like bad news. And in the depth of the city, beyond an old zone of ruined buildings that looked like broken hearts, there lived a happy young fellow by the name of Harun, the only child of the storyteller Rashid Khalifa, whose cheerfulness was famous throughout that unhappy metropolis, and whose never-ending stream of tall, short, and winding tales had earned him not one, but two nicknames. To his admirers he was Rashid, the ocean of notions, as stuffed with cheery stories as the sea was full of glumfish. But to his jealous rivals he was the Shah of Blah. To his wife, Soraya, Rashid was for many years as loving a husband as anyone could wish for. And during these years, Harun grew up in a home in which, instead of misery and frowns, he had his father's ready laughter and his mother's sweet voice raced in song. Then something went wrong. Maybe the sadness of the city finally crept in through their windows. The day Soraya stopped singing in the middle of a line, as if someone had thrown a switch, Harun guessed there was trouble brewing, but he never suspected how much. Rashid Khalifa was so busy making up and telling stories that he didn't notice that Soraya no longer sang, which probably made things worse. But then Rashid was a busy man in constant demand. He was the ocean of notions, the famous Shah of Blah. And what with all his rehearsals and performances, Rashid was so often on stage that he lost track of what was going on in his own home. He sped around the city and the country telling stories, while Soraya stayed home, turning cloudy and even a little thunderous and brewing up quite a storm. Harun went with his father whenever he could, because the man was a magician, it couldn't be denied. He would climb up onto some little makeshift stage in a dead-end alley packed with raggedy children and toothless old-timers, all squatting in the dust, and once he got going, even the city's many wandering cows would stop and cock their ears, and monkeys would jabber approvingly from rooftops, and the parrots in the trees would imitate his voice. Harun often thought of his father as a juggler, because his stories were really lots of different tales juggled together, and Rashid kept them going in a sort of dizzy whirl, and never made a mistake. Where did all these stories come from? It seemed that all Rashid had to do was to part his lips in a plump red smile, and out would pop some brand new saga, complete with sorcery, love interest, princesses, wicked uncles, fat aunts, mustachioed gangsters in yellow check pants. Fantastic locations, cowards, heroes, fights, and half a dozen catchy, hummable tunes. Everything comes from somewhere, Haroon reasoned, so these stories can't simply come out of thin air. But whenever he asked his father this most important of questions, the Shah of Blah would narrow his, to tell the truth, slightly bulging eyes and pat his wobbly stomach, and stick his thumb between his lips while he made ridiculous drinking noises. Gloop, gloop, gloop. Haroon hated it when his father acted this way. No, come on, where do they come from, really? He'd insist, and Rashid would wiggle his eyebrows mysteriously and make witchy fingers in the air. From the great story sea, he'd reply. I drink the warm story waters, and then I feel full of steam. Haroon found this statement intensely irritating. Where do you keep this hot water then? He argued craftily. In hot water bottles, I suppose. Well, I've never seen any. It comes out of an invisible tap, installed by one of the water genies, said Rashid with a straight face. You have to be a subscriber. And how do you become a subscriber? Oh, said the Shah of Blah, that's much too complicated to explain. Anyhow, said Haroon grumpily, I've never seen a water genie either, Rashid shrugged. You're never up in time to see the milkman, he pointed out. But you don't mind drinking the milk. So now kindly desist from this ifing and butting and be happy with the stories you enjoy. And that was the end of that. Except that one day Haroon asked one question too many, and then all hell broke loose. The Khalifas lived in the downstairs part of a small concrete house with pink walls, lime green windows, and blue painted balconies, with squiggly metal railings, all of which made it look, in Haroon's view, more like a cake than a building. It wasn't a grand house, nothing like the skyscrapers where the super rich folks lived. Then again, it was nothing like the dwellings of the poor either. The poor lived in tumble-down shacks made of old cardboard boxes and plastic sheeting, and these shacks were glued together by despair. And then there were the super poor, who had no homes at all. They slept on pavements and in the doorways of shops and had to pay rent to local gangsters for doing even that. So the truth is that Haroon was lucky, but luck has a way of running out without the slightest warning. One minute you've got a lucky star watching over you, and the next instant it's done a bunk. It's done a bunk. It's done a bunk. In the sad city, people mostly had big families. But the poor children got sick and starved, while the rich kids overate and quarreled over their parents' money. Still, Harun wanted to know why his parents hadn't had more children. But the only answer he ever got from Rashid was no answer at all. "There's more to you, young Harun Khalifa, than meets the blinking eye." Well, what was that supposed to mean? "We used up our full quota of child stuff just in making you," Rashid explained. "It's all packed in there, enough for maybe 4 or 5 kitties. Yes, sir, more to you than the blinking eye can see." Straight answers were beyond the powers of Rashid Khalifa, who would never take a shortcut if there was a longer, twistier road available. So Raya gave Harun a simpler reply. "We tried," she sadly said. "This child business is not such an easy thing. Think of the poor Senguptas." The Senguptas lived upstairs. Mr. Sengupta was a clerk at the offices of the city corporation, and he was as sticky, thin, and whiny-voiced and mingy as his wife. Oneta was generous and loud and wobbly fat. They had no children at all, and as a result, Oneta Sengupta paid more attention to Harun than he really cared for. She brought him sweetmeats, which was fine, and ruffled his hair, which wasn't, and when she hugged him, the great cascades of her flesh seemed to surround him completely, to his considerable alarm. Mr. Sengupta ignored Harun, but was always talking to Soraya, which Harun didn't like, particularly as the fellow would launch into criticisms of Rashid, the storyteller, whenever he thought Harun wasn't listening. "That husband of yours, excuse me if I mention," he would start in his thin, whiny voice. "Yeah, whatever. He's got his head stuck in the air and his feet off the ground. What are all these stories? Life is not a storybook or joke show. All this fun will come to no good. What's the use of stories that aren't even true?" Harun, listening hard outside the window, decided he did not care for Mr. Sengupta. This man who hated stories and storytellers, he didn't care for him one little bit. What's the use of stories that aren't even true? Harun couldn't get the terrible question out of his head. However, there were people who thought Rashid's stories were useful. In those days, it was almost election time, and the grand panjandrums of various political parties all came to Rashid, smiling their fat cat smiles to beg him to tell his stories at their rallies and nobody else's. It was well known that if you could get Rashid's magic tongue on your side, then your troubles were over. Nobody ever believed anything a politico said, even though they pretended as hard as they could that they were telling truth. In fact, this was how everyone knew they were lying. But everyone had complete faith in Rashid, because he always admitted that everything he told them was completely untrue and made up out of his own head. So the politicos needed Rashid to help them win the people's votes. They lined up outside his door with their shiny faces and fake smiles and bags of hard cash. Rashid could pick and choose. Okay. This book is not part of the public commons or something, which is why I will not continue reading this. This is Salman Rushdie, Haroun and the Sea of Stories. And it was recommended by me, by my English teacher during my studies in environmental protection. Because I told her that I was reading Harry Dresden by Jim Butcher, and she said, well, I think there's better literature out there. This is good, it's not me. I can read it, and it's nice. I would write different, but that's okay. Because what this is about is how to work with books. So while I'm reading this, certain things appear in my mind, in front of my mind's eye, which is why I'm slowly but surely transitioning away from movies. When I was younger, I used to read a lot, like really a lot, but that kind of changed. And the reason that it changed was that I just started to watch movies, so I became lazy. Because if you read books, then you have to imagine what is happening, and you can see yourself in the story as one of the characters, and then you can reflect what is happening in the story onto yourself and ask yourself how you feel about what is happening to yourself as the character you see yourself as in the story that you're reading, which is part of a book or whatever. So when I read this, it's being reflected back onto me, because I'm the one reading it, and I'm the one that's like, you know, this guy. And then I can find truth. So if I have a bad day, or I'm uncertain what to do, I can look through my bookshelf, and I may pick a book that I like, and then I start reading it, and then I know where I'm at. Because I would, for instance, start hating Mr. Sengupta, that he's talking to Rashid's wife, which is Haroun's mother, and gossiping about him, and the wife allows it. She lets him wiggle into her mind, and spread like jealousy and stuff. You get what I'm saying here, right? So it's the wife that's apparently weak, but it's the husband that fails to notice because he's so busy like, yeah, that he doesn't realize what's happening. Which means that in the larger scheme of things, as a husband, you have to pay attention to your wife, even when she would be somewhere else, because in spirit, we're connected. And so we know of people that came into life and they immediately started looking for their partners. And such as I and such as many others, they may find it or find her or him at some point if life wants it so. And then you may feel complete. And that's the truth of my life. I met the woman, and everything I did, I devoted to her as my wife. Doesn't mean you always have to be nice, because sometimes, you know, your wife can be a real, like, ass. And you too, of course, because then, you know, you're a reflection of your wife, and your wife is a reflection of you. So you have to put in the work. You have to see your partner, and if you want her to stick around. So what you could say is that Rashid had a gift for telling stories, but he was also dishonest. Which is why when people asked him, where do the stories come from? He could have said, well, because I'm in love with my wife. And from that love come the stories, because we're connected, and she's the ocean, and out of that ocean come the stories. Because when the wife left, there were no stories anymore. So he took all the credit for what he was doing, while it was the love to his wife that funneled this. And then she ran off with another man in the end. So this is stuff that, you know, the first time I tried reading this, like a couple of years ago, it was impossible. And then I set it aside. I didn't just read it because I hated it. There was too much stuff being reflected onto me, and I was unable to understand the words. You know, it's just like trying to read Gandhi without having your own experiences in life, with like being part of a resistance or whatever, or just doing your thing, which is what this is about, you know. If you look at the Satyagraha thing, they just wanted to live in peace and have the same rights as other humans, without being discriminated for the color of their skin or their vaccination status. And so if I want to speak openly and say how I feel as a human being, and then demand the right to be free, then I have to do something for it. Then I have to work hard. I have to learn how to communicate my emotions. I have to be able to say, this is how I feel when I'm being discriminated. So sometimes you have to like show your emotions to get people to feel for you, because otherwise they'll just see you, you know, as this rotten dog or something. Yeah, you've got no emotions because we're all rational. You know, now I'm just losing track, but that's, you know, sometimes all you need is just something to keep you going. So sure, I can read this, and I have been, but now I stopped because I was yesterday at page 22, and I'm probably preparing myself to do another audiobook, because there are things that I feel like I just need something else now. And certain things certainly take time, and I like taking my time. So reading books makes sense. If you want to learn about the world that you live in. Because then you've got a lot of clues, you know, also about politicians. Okay, now I'm losing my juice, because speaking can be, depending on what you talk about, very costly in terms of life's energy. And sometimes I wish I could just be in silence, but most people just don't understand silence. And that's who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the people who don't understand silence or telepathy, who just think that, you know, everything is just like the flesh. They completely ignore the fact that there's a spirit. And that's what we're trying to get back to. Acknowledge the fact that we are humans, like spirits made flesh. But we're still spirits, like our essence is spirit. And around that are the layers, the veils. That's the disguise, but inside we're all spirit. And my spirit can feel like, ugh, because it's just so sucked dry. So we need to do things to make our spirit feel like this. And so yes, I sit, I worked on my body, on my composure. And then I read like this. And when I get tired, I sleep, or I do something else. And I feel it's important to be like this. And to try to trust that whatever you're here to do is going to show itself if you ask what you're here to do. So Salman Rushdie started writing stories about what he saw in his own life. And he packed it in stories. So, if like Rashid tells a story about a genie, so what did he say? Does it make sense? Can that be translated? So he says, Harun asks him, where do stories come from? And then he says, from the great story sea, I drink the warm story waters and then I feel full of steam. So he had a connection to some place and that filled him with stories. You can call that place love, call it the heart space. It's coming from somewhere, right? So I'm being nourished by something from outside of myself, and that gives me the energy to do all kinds of things. So yesterday I went to the boulder hall, although I was fasting. And I was already at the point. I was fasting. I had tea with me and I drank one coffee with milk. And then I bouldered for several hours and went home at 10. Where did the energy come from? Well, I know something about meditation. When I get tired, I sit down, I do like this. And then I wait, and suddenly the energy is back. I feel rejuvenated, and then I can climb again. And then Harun found this statement intensely irritating. Where do you keep the hot water? And it comes out of an invisible tap installed by one of the water genies. You have to be a subscriber. So you have to want to have it. But you cannot ask another man where he's drawing his stuff from. Because all he knows that he did certain things and suddenly it started flowing. So if you want a connection, you have to find your own connection. Because his connection was for telling stories. And now Harun, there was probably a part that was jealous of his father's ability. And if Rashid was like a dragon speaking in riddles, then what's the point of getting angry at it if you fail to understand it? Well, that's the riddle of your life. That's what you have to sit with. That's what you have to spend time with. That's what you need to do for yourself to figure out what's your story. Like, do you like storytelling? Do you like handwork? Do you like working with wood? Do you like carpentry? Do you like, weaving carpets? You could start weaving carpets for whatever purpose, just for yourself. You could start learning ancient techniques and methods that are all forms of meditation that humans used to do. And they invested a lot of time in creating things and it made them happy. And today, everything is being created by machines. And so everyone's unhappy because all they do now is sit around and feel like, oh, I can watch movies now thanks to technology. So what New Habits is talking about is that you have to find your own way. Like, there's no use to adopt my habits unless you feel really good about them, but they are my habits. I worked hard to find them. Certain things that I like making a double shot espresso and then turning it into some kind of Americano with green cardamom and oat milk. That's what I chose today. Maybe you would like to drink rooibos tea. So whatever your new habit is, needs to be your new habit. I like sitting like this and reading books. Well, what's about liking? It's simply something that teaches me to sit straight in the meditative posture for longer periods of time while having something to do. I can focus during these sessions, on what I read, and that's also meditation. Another meditation is just sitting there with your eyes open. I do that at night now regularly, and my eyes start to water. I call this open eye meditation. I just sit there in darkness, just stare into the darkness, and then I just let my mind wander, and then things come up and I start to cry. But not like, "Aah!" No, I never cry like this. I mean, maybe there were times as a child or something. "Aah!" No, I just sit there, then, water just flows out of my eyes. And this is a very manly way to relieve yourself, so I have to make less art. Because if you have so many tears in yourself, I mean, how much do you want to cry into paintings? It's just like at some stage you just want to sit there in silence, just say, let's relax a little, I've done a lot of art. And people seem to be completely uninterested. So in a way, this is like me flipping the finger to humanity. Because it's ridiculous what they demand of a man. To realize that he's got something, It's of course possible that the whole internet is so full that nobody knows I exist, but sorry, everyone who's different is just being treated like he's a weirdo. And so for me, a new habit was also to say no. Yesterday at the Boulder Hall, somebody came, he was like, "Ah!" Yeah, because you're clear. I cleaned myself, I'm clean. People want to hug me "Ah!" Fuck off, man. The touch of somebody who found some kind of enlightenment in himself can be like ecstasy, can be like an orgasm. Yeah. So, this is like healing energy. But not because I'm healing energy. It's because I have cleansed myself. I have cleaned my chakras. I went to hell and back. Probably millions of times. I carried the water. I cleaned the mirror. I did my planks. I did my suffering. I went through phases of I want to kill myself. So, I spent hours looking into the depth to discover who I am. And then people come and they just want to take it from me. I'm like, nope. Yesterday on the way here, I met a woman. She was inclining. Yeah, we were just having a chat. She was something about, there's this woman and she just gives hugs to everyone. It's yeah, I don't hug people. I'm really selfish with myself because to me, I'm here for my wife. As shit as this sounds, I don't like hugs because a hug is like sex. And so for me, when I would be with my wife, I would say, no hugs. But can I tell that to her? So I don't know. Sure you can, but what will she do? She may just do it anyway to piss me off, but if she wants to respect me as her husband who gives a direction, then she better listen. So, what's the point of rebelling against things that are good for you? It's like rebelling against sitting straight. No, I want to look like cool. Yeah, try being cool for 20 years. Yeah, you see these guys walking around completely wobbly. So what's the point of being cool? Being cool comes from being relaxed. And that's meditation. That's being in flow. So new habits are there to change you into someone else. But you don't go from, I'm completely fat, I'm addicted to sugar. You don't go from there immediately to, I'm super thin and I'm the best yogi, because it would be phony. The best way is to make baby steps. To enjoy being you and introducing little changes so that you barely notice that you're changing. And then it may take you 10 years. But I want to be thin right now.
so that people can love me, like, ah. No, you have to love yourself, and when you start loving yourself more, you'll transition for, I have like pimples everywhere, and I'm sick and disgusting, and my mind's dirty, and I'm jerking off. It's like transitioning from that to, hey, I can do yoga. But I don't have to do yoga like Christopher. I can do yoga like me. I can do yoga just by living and by balancing myself. And if I want to do things like Ashtanga yoga, then I can do that. But Ashtanga yoga, the physical stuff, is just part of it. And I see so many people, like I can see when somebody's bouldering, if they're like stuck in their body. Because if you boulder and you think of how your butt looks like, then you're gonna boulder in a way that always highlights your butt. And then, you're gonna wear the tightest pants you can find. And then you're gonna boulder, and your whole focus is gonna be like on your butt while you're bouldering. And then you're gonna boulder in a way that always makes sure your butt is seen by everyone. So new habits are also to be here, And then the boulder like this, I'm like here. I'm not in my here, I'm not here, like walk around like, I'm my butt. Oh yeah. I have a butt, but I don't highlight it. Because if you put your consciousness into your butt, then that's what people are gonna use. And that's what you realize. So, don't fucking get it. Okay, there's a lot of things that make me like, what the heck has happened to humanity? It's like parents sniffing their children. Have you pooped? It's like, what? You trying to suck the life out of my rectum or what? I mean, that just needs to change. Okay, new habits is for you to discover. That's your way out of what you think you need to escape. And then into a place that's like more clean. Well, this is all what I did. You have to figure out your own way. And so new habits is just about like slowly but surely transitioning into what you can see for yourself in the future. Yeah, and so today I felt like yesterday I bouldered a lot. So today I feel like I don't need to do planks. So I felt like doing this instead, having a bit like a relaxed day. And so, yeah, I'm still wondering, but so what I could do today, for instance, because I feel a bit stiff, wow, it's just like, sometimes I do something else until I feel like doing something else. Wow. Stretching is really, really intense. And I really struggle against it. So yesterday was about yin yoga. That's what the woman told me. And then she made this like, there's a woman that gives hugs to everyone. But I don't want your hugs. I want my wife's hugs. And that's very clear to me. That's what I choose. But still, yesterday was a good day. I mean, I've been struggling against myself for a long time, and yesterday I was able to like communicate with people. There was this guy and he clearly wanted something. He would have taken a hug like, She's like, fuck off, man. Do your cleansing. Do your cleansing. If you feel depressed, then you gotta change something. These people just wiggle around like the dirty eels they are. And sure, yeah, I've never been like that. I have been in my own way, and then it got so bad that I had to change. So all you need is to know that there are people out there who were on the verge of going insane and who managed to survive, who lost track of who they are, and then they started to change because they realized this, what everyone else is doing, no longer works for me. You can do it for some time, But at some point, it's time to reduce the amount of you eat, reduce the things you do, and then focus on the stuff that is specifically you. And sometimes it's enough to just sit like this, you know. And you don't have to like, you know. You can just like take your time, just sit like this. And then just but yeah, I'm reluctant to do these yin yoga things simply because I'm already, I think, quite flexible. But there are times where I realize I need to do also stretching. We're still in winter, by the way. Yeah, this is the 22nd of February. My windows are all open, but I feel fine. Because I've been living like this now for some time. In the beginning, it was really hard. Like, really hard. If people come in here, they feel like terrified of the cold. But all radiators are turned off. It saves a lot of energy. And I spend more time. You know, I feel relaxed. I like it. And that's so strange. And I could have never lived like this with other people that were like in charge, right? Yeah, the walls will get moldy. Yeah, then you should, you know, have more air. Replace the dirty energy, because to me mold is not a symptom of, you know, too much moisture. It's about stale energy. You have to replenish, refresh. So one new habit that I'm working towards, that I'm gonna get more into, is breath work. So sometimes it really takes time, and you have to, you know, I drank a coffee now, but I'm relaxed, right? So, you know, this is strange for me as well. I went to the boulder hall, I came back, but I didn't feel dirty. I felt good. I don't know, I felt good. I even touched people, and I talked to them. And I bouldered a lot. And then I even asked someone to take me part of the way home. Okay, then I walked home, and then I felt like a bit skittish. There was somebody, he was like coming my way or something. I was afraid. I ran away. Because I do feel like, you know, I just didn't want to have contact with anyone. You know, whether he would have done something or not, I cannot say, but I was just unstable. Because I was open, very open and vulnerable, so I had to find my way back home. You see, now I'm doing this, it's stretching my shoulders, and there's pins and needles in my arms, because the energy is flowing back into them. So this is just really important. It is really important. And then the energy flows, so everyone can heal themselves. You just have to do it. And stop listening to what other people are saying. Unless you feel like they've really figured something out. You see, and suddenly I get back to myself more. I trust in my feeling. This was a weird idea, by the way. But I trusted it. I trusted the voice inside. So this is then a day where you just slowly ease into, you know, working out. So I have a different life than you do, probably. So if you go to the bowler hall on a Friday or do whatever, like intense exercise, then on a Saturday you can do this. And then I slept until 12 today. Just stayed in bed. And then I worked myself out of it. Opened all the windows. And then I started to see what I want to do with this day. I'm still unsure if I will stay inside. You see, today I don't want to do too much. It's gonna annoy me. I also need lazy days. That's why I think I'm gonna eat, possibly. Don't know what else to do. Okay. Yeah, so whatever you do. Wow. Wow. And then you've got your strength back. And from that point, you can move towards, you know, whatever else you want to do today. Just don't know. It's like, should I eat now? Should I not eat? Okay, that's enough. New habits.